I did 2 trips to Florida. I just got back yesterday for my second one. But my first trip to Florida was very, very informative and interesting. It was a conference, a 4-day conference on natural resources, which I think all plays into investing in alternatives. We talked about what's going on with currencies, CBDCs, what's going on with technology, what's going on with electricity and the different technologies in electrifying the world in the future and different ways to do it. We talked about geopolitics. We talked about how the wars around the world affect all this. We talked about rare earth metals and how newer technologies are coming into play, which will require different types of rare earth metals. And so, technology wars going on, currency wars going on, metal wars, territorial wars. All it was very, very interesting about where the world is going on a massive scale. And one common theme was, which is relevant to here, was most of the people there felt that with the introduction of a competing world reserve currency and the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now South America, they're forming their own coalitions, which now apparently 41 countries have signed agreements with the BRICS to use different forms of medium for trade, which will threaten the power of the U.S. dollar. But with all that going on,
why do you think so many people signed up for that? 41 countries.
I'm going to tell you what the common theme was. The common theme was that since the U.S. has weaponized the dollar and decides on their own who they wish to sanction based on whatever beliefs. We want to sanction China, we want to sanction Russia, we want to sanction Iran, and we're doing all this stuff. And here's what it all comes down to, as I gathered. It all comes down to, as it always does, it comes down to oil and the purchasing of oil. And so at the center of all that is Saudi Arabia. And Saudi, many years ago, made the deal that all of the oil in the world had to be purchased with U.S. dollars. And since we have turned our back on Saudi Arabia and said, no, we're not going to be a coal and, black gold anymore. Now we're going to go green. Saudi's like, okay, then I guess we don't need you guys and we'll go find other partners. And that's where everybody else is jumping in, saying we can purchase, trade all this oil in either yuan, petro yuans, or gold or whatever. And trading is going elsewhere outside of the dollar system. And so I think, we led that, the weaponization of the dollar and who we can sanction and how we're going to take the world in one direction and leave everybody else behind. And that pissed a lot of other countries off and said, fine, then we'll just do our own thing and we'll start our own club. If we can't be part of your club, or if you want to say, hey, you're punishing the club, or you're punishing the club, and you're punishing the club, and you just want to do it because that's where ideologies are leading you, then we don't want to be subject to that. We'll just start our own club. I see that with the 13-year-old girls and who wants to be in what club and who wants to be loved by those. And fine, you're not a part of our club, we'll just start our own. And so I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And I think we'll continue to shoot ourselves in the foot. I think we will continue to print more debt, devalue our dollar. Price of gold is going to go up. And more the stuff that we're doing in buying this debt to deleverage the country is going to become more and more and more and more important of what we're doing. I think we go through a little bit of a down cycle, but on the back end of this down cycle is going to be some huge prosperity on the back end of it. That's what I gather from you.
I think, we talked about it before and you rattled off at the top all the different topics that we covered at that conference, from, currency to electricity to green to whatever. I mean, on one hand, we're saying, well, it's a global economy and, we've got to depend on, other countries for different things. And then, we also try to, like you say, put the dollar as being the dominant force out there. So we're kind of, butting heads with ourselves because, we're like, well, we're not going to produce our own oil like we were, say, 5 years ago.
Right.
But, we don't really want to do trades with the people that are out there producing the oil. So I'm like, okay, well, then you need to be more, nationalist and produce your own oil and be energy independent. But that's not sexy enough for some people because, that's not green. So, and what gets me about the green without getting too political is like green is supposed to be a global thing, but it comes out where green is like a U.S. thing. It doesn't matter how green U.S. is. If the rest of the world is not green, we're not going to make a big impact on that. So I don't know. There's a lot of people making a lot of money talking green, but there ain't a whole lot going on. So,
and that's exactly what you see, right? Is that you'll get the minority of a camp that'll want to impose its ideas and its will on a majority of an opposing camp. And that's kind of what you're seeing on the global stage with the dollar and us wanting to go green. And that's where everybody else is like, fine, you guys want to take that microscopic view and go that way and not include the black gold part of the world too, then we'll just do our own thing. And it's not to say that the rest of them are not going green as well. They're looking as that green is there to supplement energy sources, not supplant all the energy sources, right? They're not going extreme and say, well, it's green and nothing else. They're saying, hey, green is great. Let's add that to our bucket of different ways that we can, have a society that thrives with energy and technology and build.
We'll so you're saying there's different shades of green.
There's different shades of green. Yes, you could say it that way. Absolutely.
All right. I agree. One
of the things that I found interesting with technology-wise, especially here in the country, since they're not letting certain countries drill for more resource and see what's in the ground, just goes back to our ingenuity. And I think we have the lead on technology and ingenuity and brains and smarts and stuff, right? So we're always going to be great there. But what they ended up doing said, well, since they won't let us drill and look into the ground of what we really have, they came up with this technology where it's a giant like sonogram, like they use to see, inside of women's wombs to see what the baby and stuff. And they run this giant magnet sonogram through helicopters across the land, and they can image exactly what's in the land. If they can't go into the land, then they can image it with technology from above the land. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, they may have even been able to do that from a balloon that was floating across the country or something, right? I mean, you never know.
That's right.
So, but one thing you were talking, I was reading an article about, and it was the amount of international investors that are buying real estate in the U.S., especially in the residential. And they're like, oh, it was up. Well, it was up as opposed to last year, but it's way down compared to pre-pandemic, right? And the more I dig into it, and I'm by no means an expert, but the more I dig into it, it's like, I don't know that it's a good thing that we have so much, one, debt, and two, property ownership by countries that, for the most part, are adversarial to us.
I agree.
Especially, as you mentioned earlier, as far as like, being able to reciprocate. We're not over there buying a bunch of land in China and a bunch of land in Russia and India and Brazil and all this other kind of stuff. So I'm a little concerned on that. And I know probably a decade or so ago, China owned tons of the commercial properties. They may have deleveraged themselves and liquidated some because they had their own issues with Evergrande and some of their other funds over there where they had but it's different. If China, if they say you need to not be so capitalist, like what was the guy, Jack Ma, and what was it, Alibaba or whatever, they pretty much shut him down.
Yeah.
and it's crazy. And you can't live in a bubble. You can't just say we're the U.S. and we're going to do our own thing, leave us alone. But we do have to be self-sufficient, and we have to have our own capital market. And relying on foreign investments to propel our economy, I think, is putting us in a very precarious situation.
I agree. I was just reading an article today. Why the point you just made is so important. I was reading an article today that there is this mysterious anonymous group buying land around one of the military bases in California from farmers, bought up all the land, and now suing the farmers to try to bankrupt them.
We'll go back to the top. You said it was an anonymous investor.
They don't know. It was an anonymous investor group. They don't know who's behind all of this. They create some sort of shell buying entity, and whether it be through trusts, LLCs, but there was some foreign link to it. Something was offshore, coming in, buying land, and it was around an Air Force base out in California. And they were looking at this like this seems a little suspicious, as that they're coming in, buying all this land surrounding the Air Force base, and now trying to push out the farmers that sold them the land, saying, well, all these farmers conspired and we overpaid, when in fact they went in and just offered tremendous amounts of money for the land and stuff. So I'm not quite sure what that's about as well. But going back to what you were saying, this kind of seems there's not everything on the surface that meets the eye.
There's got to be ulterior motives, right?
Exactly. There's something going on there. Who's coming in, who's blocking it, who didn't get their cut, right? Around the Air Force base, and the farmers are the ones. It's always going to be the innocent guy that's going to be the one footing the bill and losing out on this. So it seems like a regular playbook of politics is what it sounds like.
So it's crazy, but
it's important. I mean, you may see some stuff out there in Texas where you see a lot of this land being.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so much land in Texas compared to where you're from, originally the Northeast, where everything is so dense and compacted. Yeah. You can get outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area or the Houston area or San Antonio, and there's just hundreds of miles of land that really just out there, and you don't know how that land is trading and who's buying this tens of thousands of acres and so forth. And, I mean, you hear all kind of conspiracy theories, Bill Gates is hoarding up farmland all around the country, and, other people. And, is it for good intentions? Is it for some kind of play down the road where he's going to, be the largest landowner? I think back in the day, Ted Turner, who started CNN and all that, was one of the largest landowners. So I get it. A lot of billionaires, take up, but ranch land and farmland and stuff like that, it's just not, it's not super sexy just to go out and buy 100,000 acres of farmland without some end game in place.
Yeah.
So that's good. We need to keep our eye on that situation there and kind of, see what's going on.
And this is all the 30,000 foot view of what goes on in the world, right? And so it's not, and even when I talked about before with, BRICS currency and, challenging the dollar, none of that stuff in changing world domination and power struggles, none of that stuff happens overnight. This takes years and years and years for stuff to happen. And so, part of why you and I are talking and helping those that are listening to us to give them actionable things they can do today, right? But the point of looking at the 30,000 foot view of what goes on is so you can posture yourself today. I always look at the example of, a surfer, right? As a surfer, you're looking for the right wave and you want to get in front of the wave, and you got to get out there, position yourself, get ready, get your board ready, get balanced, and then the wave comes and it does all the work. And that's part of how we're trying to describe all this stuff too. You want to know what's coming so you can posture yourself now while the opportunities are still out there, so that when things do change and they do move quickly, because once they start moving, they move quickly. You want to be prepared so that you're riding certain waves and your money is making more of your wealth, and as opposed to your individual efforts, right? You want to work on your business and your portfolio as opposed to in your business and in your portfolio. So that's kind of why we talk about some of this stuff, to see what's coming, how do you posture yourself, and then we relate it down to our businesses, which is debt, over leveraging, and deleveraging.
Yeah, I mean, you can't operate in any industry, especially ours, with your head in the sand, right?
Yeah.
You have to know what's going on. I mean, you get out there on a surfboard and you're not paying attention to the waves, well, you're not ready when it comes, or you're going under, right? You're not
Or even
riding.
better, if you're not paying attention to those sharks that are circling around you, you got another problem.
Yeah, there you go. And that's a good analogy, because we know there are sharks out there.
There's sharks in this business. That's right.
And, it's interesting because, as we sit here in the beginning of August, you call it the dog days of August. Well, in Texas anyway, it's been the dog day of summer because it's been over 100 degrees, it seems like, for 2 months. But typically the summer's a little bit slow activity-wise in our business. A lot of folks go on holiday, as they would say, over across the pond, or we call vacation. And then, the end of July, people start coming back because school's getting ready to crank up in August. So people start saying, all right, maybe one last trip, but, you better be, buckle up by Labor Day, because the last part of the year is coming up. So things start flowing. And this past week, I've seen a lot of stuff just come across our trade desk of finally, what people have been telling me. Oh, I got some stuff. When all of a sudden it's like, hey, did you get it? I sent it to you. So holidays over, and it's like, okay, now, I can see the pipelines getting bigger. And how does that match up with our capital stack? How does that match up with our capital partners? What kind of exits do we want to look at? And how can we position ourselves? Because I do think September through December have traditionally been busy months, but I think this year in particular, we're going to see a lot of stuff, because we had talked about it, I think, on a previous episode that folks can obviously subscribe and check out, that people are repositioning and balance and changing their balance sheets, and they're trying to figure out, what do I need to do? Do I need to take a loss? Do I need to move some product? How do I take my portfolio and reposition it? Do I liquidate so I have capital available for new opportunities coming? And that's where you and I kind of, I don't want to say sit on the sideline. We more like scout and say, okay, we're ready. So when the deal comes, we're prepared, to your point, of riding that wave, not chasing the wave.
Yeah. And not getting swallowed by the sharks in the meantime.
Right. You like how I mentioned subscribe and click that button right down there? I think we're going to have a nice little graphic.
You got to point that.
There you go. Click the bell for notifications the next time we have a new episode. There you go. See, we can't see our producer in the background, but he's smiling as big as you right now, Rob. He's happy that we're talking about that.
Listen to him.
But no, I mean, you mentioned it. That's the purpose of the podcast. It's not to sit there and regurgitate a bunch of statistics and things. It's to kind of talk about what's going on and help people be prepared for not only what we see, but what we anticipate coming, and what we can do to help you get to that position.
So as we do this, you and I started this just as, just two guys wanting to tell some war stories, pick on each other a little bit. We've been in the industry for a long time. We think we know what we're talking about. I think we know what we're talking about. I just wanted to show off.
You think you know what you're talking about anyway.
I know what I'm talking about. So, but I think what it's really starting to evolve into is, I mentioned this last time we spoke was, and we want to talk about it more, was relevance. I think what this is turning into is we really want to help others out there that want to become relevant in this business, which will obviously help us continue to stay relevant in the business. But we do want to help others that want to get in and posture themselves and protect themselves from sharks and ride that wave and keep that balance and not wipe out. Because it's important to have more people. And honestly, if people are listening, if women, I don't know if I can say it that way, females or women, I don't know what term we're using today, but if women are listening, we need more women in this industry in finances. That it's mostly male dominated, but I see more and more women coming into this, and we need to see more women coming into this because this is an industry that can do well for anybody. And we need to see more people coming into it. And we're doing this. I think this is turning into, for you and I, a place where people can start to learn how to become relevant and really tip their toe into the water and then move on from there.
Well, whenever somebody's looking at an industry or a business, their number one fear is like, what is the barrier of entry, right? And you're talking about being relevant. Well, how do I get relevant? How do I get in the business? I don't know, Bob. I don't know, Rob. I don't know what's going on. And, we can kick around ideas as, go to conferences, go to this, subscribe to podcasts, check out different, industry leaders and so forth. But, a lot of it is, we refer to it a lot as, like social proof. You see other people succeeding in the business, whether it's exiting from a non-performing loan and helping not only the homeowner, but making a profit for yourself. Well, you need to see that example and learn from that and realize that it's not going to the moon. You can do it as well. And, how do you do that? Well, you do have to become educated and you have to learn from folks that have done it. Why would you go out there on your own and try to do it and do the same mistakes that you and I have done and, unfortunately not made as much money as we should have on some deals because, it was a learning experience. Well, you can learn from that deal. So, social proof is important. And you get that. Not only listening to, old guys like us, but just being around people that are in the business.
There's only one old guy on this talk. There's no us in that.
He's behind the scene. He hadn't turned his camera on.
Oh, okay. He hasn't turned it. Okay. Sorry. I want to make sure that we were clear on that.
Yeah, I got you. I don't subscribe to the hair color and everything like, some folks, but
I thought you did. It's just that it's white, so you go for it. It's the cheapest one on the shelf.
That's what nobody else buys it, so it's always on sale.
That's right. That's what inflation does to you, right? You go from the dark colors, dyes for your hair, to the lighter colors because, hey, it's inflation now, so I lost my purchasing power. I lost the color that I can get off the shelf. I have to go for white.
I want to talk about this. I know. I think we talked about it before, but inflation is always, look. There's a lot of stuff going on in the news and stuff, and you're talking about inflation, recession, interest rates going up, and all that kind of stuff. I came up with this, and I'm sure I wasn't the first one to say this the other day, but it's like it's the front lines versus the headlines. Okay, I consider us on the front lines. We're in the day-to-day grind of what's going on in the world. We know, is the price of distressed debt going up, down compared to a year ago or whatever? You read a headline, it's all, either doom and gloom or everything's rosy, right? And, just for the record, everybody paying attention, this could be a 15-second clip, so be ready. When they report inflation, it's a rate of change of inflation. Okay?
Yes.
When they say that inflation is 2%, it only means it changed 2%. It doesn't tell you it's up 100 from a year ago. Okay? So the bar has been raised and now it's only changed 2%. So I'm like, it's not. And then why is we raise rates? What happens over in Europe? their bank raises rates, right? And debt becomes more expensive, and that takes us into our theme that we talk about every time we get on here about being leveraged and over leveraged, and how do you deleverage. And I know we harp on it a lot, but that is the trigger that gives us the opportunity to do business, because people either want to borrow money and we can help them leverage, or they want to sell stuff so they can deleverage, and we're there with our capital to help them there too. So
I totally do. I've thought about that and thought about that and thought about that and never put it into words until you did it. So awesome that you said that, because it needs to be said. You're so right. It's not that the inflation has just gone up. Oh, we only got two. You're right. It's two percentage points more than where we've been. And it just keeps going up and up and up.
Yep.
And the only way back around out of this is one of two things. It's either taxation or deleveraging. It's either one side of the balance sheet or the other. You either got to increase the government's income through taxes, or you got to decrease their spending. And we know which way that's going. They're not going to decrease their spending, and they're not going to decrease, all the money they borrow, because they're funding deficits now. So it's only going to be towards taxation that's going to come more. So let me give you one more update of stuff that I found since we've last talked. I keep track of, and I watch and monitor different countries that have citizenship by investment programs. You can buy real estate and get passports and stuff based on X amount. You want to help that economy.
That's the only way you can be a citizen of the Cayman Islands, is if you buy real estate.
That's right. And we have it here too. It's the EB-5 program, right? You spend money in this country and it's your way to citizenship, which I know a lot of investors use and take advantage of that to get some foreign national money into the country. So all these countries have it. But what happened just recently was a lot of these countries now upped the restrictions and upped the bar, so as not to let it be as accessible to as many people as it was prior. And one of the reasons they cited was because a lot of these programs are being abused for tax evasion. And so once they start tightening loopholes, around the world of where you can start putting money to have favorable tax treaties, and they start going after that, they're just laying the groundwork for, well, now that we've trapped you here and blocked you here and blocked you here and done all this, now we're going to tax the hell out of you because you got no place to go. And I see this just as the groundwork of getting ready for massive taxes coming, implications to investors, and the window of opportunity is closing in some of these places.
Everybody wants a piece of whatever somebody's making, right?
Yeah.
And, one side of the industry is trying to figure out tax loopholes and ways not to pay taxes. And a lot of the public sector, the governments, are trying to figure out a way to get their share of the taxes. And even if you invest overseas, or if you're an overseas investor, we're still going to tax you. So, it's just a game. And it's like, look, I have my own thing. I have my own channel. This is what I'm going after. Whatever's good for Bob and Angie and, our family and our companies and all that kind of stuff. That's what we're going to focus on. I can't worry about, in 10 years, am I going to get taxed for this or taxed for that? And I worry about our kids, right?
Sure.
And there's probably there's I don't know if you call it a generation, but there's a gap between my kids and your kids, right? My kids are grown adults. Yours are still, 9 and 12.
Yeah.
So you've got a good runway ahead of them. So, in the next, let's see, Joe's 9. In the next decade, he'll be getting ready to go to college. It's a whole different world by then. You and I, you can put a time capsule right now. Oh, I think when Joe goes to, I'm going to say right now, he's going to go to NC State. Okay, so you can play this back to him and say, okay, Bob said you're going to go to NC State and be a Wolfpack. Who knows what that would even look like, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think he's going to be an engineer. He's going to study maps. He might be an architect. I mean, he's going to solve the world's problems. But what environment is he going to live? What can we do, Rob, right now to help people his age, right, succeed in the next 10 to 20 years as their prime education time?
I already know the answer because that's my mission. And you nailed it. It's because it's personal to me because what are their future going to look like, right? And it's exactly for what I just said. When you have these other opportunities to grow your nest egg and they're starting to close up, you need to take advantage of them now before they're all gone, not for ourselves, but for the next generation, right? We got to take advantage of some of these opportunities. Inflation, as you said, it's not going to go up it will go up by 2%, but in the aggregate, it's up in double digits, right? And so really the goal here for everybody should be, since there are things we have control over and things we don't have control over, the things we don't have control over is government spending. They're going to continue to spend. They're going to continue to try and tax. And so the more they do that, the more it erodes what's in our pockets and what our net worth is and our lifestyle options. So what they do creates that erosion. We have no control over what they do. So we have no control over the erosion of our wealth. But we do have control over when we are putting our money to work and outpacing that rate of erosion. So we can gain more and have a net positive growth, and we're growing it faster and greater, less riskier than what the erosion rate is. That's how we combat this. That's how we get it ahead for them, because we don't know what their world is going to be. But all we can do is arm them with more zeros and commas in the bank account. And what we have to do today is make sure that net positive rate of growth is a net positive rate of growth by outpacing the rate of erosion. And so that's why we talk about all these big things on the big stage, because where are the opportunities going? Where are they going to be, taking more away from us? We have more control. Where are our moves and posturing getting in front of the wave? Where are the sharks that are going to? So you need to know all this stuff because you really have to be active today to get that positive rate of wealth accumulation going, because it's getting more and more and increasingly more difficult and more scarce to do so.